And tell me a little bit more about how you came to get to non-duality. You said it was sort of a switch or a shift of some sort. How did you get there?
Yeah, so, all my life, I didn't realize what I was doing, but what I was doing was, I was constantly rehashing and revisiting the past.
The story, right?
Yeah.
Your story.
We're always projecting out towards future. And that doesn't mean, like necessarily 3 years ago or 3 years from now. It literally means like a minute ago, or 3 minutes ago, or 3 days ago, or 3 weeks ago, or 3 minutes from now, or 3... So it was constant referencing of that.
Never here. Always there.
Never here. Never here. And didn't know that, actually, because when your whole frame of reference is that constant referencing of the story,
right,
you don't even know what presence is. You have no frame of reference for it.
Well, you can't, right? Because you're in your mind the whole time.
Right.
And so...
Right. So I came to it, you could say, by noticing what my mind was doing.
Oh, you did?
I had to see what the mind was doing.
How'd you get there?
Someone said to me, they said that it's actually possible that instead of engaging in a thought, it's actually possible to see that a viewpoint is arising.
Almost like David Hawkins calls it a positionality, I think he calls it, where the viewpoint or the position you've taken on things, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, I try to break it down very simply, and what I've been saying lately is just a little funny metaphor. It's like a bubble, like that you blow bubbles. Okay, when the normal way is when a thought arises, the bubble, we get into the content of the bubble. So we're inside the content of the thought.
Almost stuck in the bubble. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so whatever the bubble tells us, we have to believe because we're inside the content of the thought.
Almost like a sphere of influence of our mind or something.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, it colors our reality. So if I say that this happened to me the other day, then there's a sense of self invested in that thought.
Right.
Because like I say, the bubbles, it's like your head is in the thought. Your sense of self, who you are, is in the thought. And so when we're living in the story, we're doing that really with every thought of past and future.
Almost always based upon our past belief system and how we view it through our glasses or something.
Yeah. It's also, it's like, what I say to people is that when you're in the content of a thought, when you believe a thought, you don't really have a choice. Well, you have to believe the thought. And you don't really have a choice in that way, and so you just continue believing every thought that arises. But there comes an opportunity where if you listen to what I'm saying is that when a thought arises, instead of going into the content of it, you see that you notice that the thought is arising. You see that a thought is arising, and there's something prior to the thought that sees it arising. And that's actually an extraordinary possibility that you can do that, because you then have the first opportunity not to go into the content of that thought, which means not to go into your story.
Almost to watch it.
Yeah, to watch it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
And then if you do that, I invite people to do that as much as possible, and then not only to watch that a thought is arising, but when you see a thought arising, to take a moment and just relax all viewpoints and all labels for just a second in the moment that you notice that thought arising. Because it's like when you notice a bubble arising, it's like the bubble, it loses its fuel and it just sort of dissipates or falls away. And in the falling away of that thought, it's just not there anymore, and there's nothing there. There's just space, presence. And if you relax into space and presence, it doesn't have any borders. It's like the present moment opens up in a deep and spacious way. And you're at rest there for 1 second. Even if it's only for like a short, very short second, it's okay. Because be easy on yourself, and even if you have just one moment of a sense of spaciousness, because the mind has such momentum, it'll come back. But you have another opportunity when it comes back to notice that it's doing that.
Notice the next thought, right?
Yeah, and then take another moment. And when you're doing that, there becomes an automatic return to that, because it's so peaceful and so liberating and so freeing from the story. It's like the whole body and mind gets into it. It just transforms you really on every level. And it also provides another opportunity, because you brought this up about emotional freedom.
Oh.
Which I think is beautiful, because we're not. It's not just about thought. We're feeling. Human beings, we feel,
Right.
and a lot of our emotional energy is tied into the energy of emotion is tied into storytelling. Personal
Yes, very
storytelling.
much so. Yeah.
So as people don't have any choice but to believe a thought when they're in the content of a thought. They also don't have much choice than to actually feel any suffering or anxiety or anger that comes with the thought, because it all arises at once. So if I'm in my story of resentment towards somebody or someone, there's something happening in my body. And if I'm only in the mental aspect, and if I'm only thinking, then I actually have no clue what's happening in my body.
You almost miss the body portion of
Yeah.
it. And that's sort of it's interesting when you say that. I think a lot of spiritual-oriented people tend to do that. They tend to miss the body portion of it.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful insight.
Yeah.
That's a great insight. Thank you.
Yeah, it really is, and that's what you brought it up, emotional freedom, because I wanted to go ahead and say the rest of what I'm saying is that it's not just about being free of mind.
Right.
It's not really even being that. It's actually facing every emotion directly and seeing it for what it is, as an energy in the body.
Yeah.
And when you actually see that a viewpoint is arising and the viewpoint can rest, then there's basic awareness here. On a very, very basic level, just awakeness. And the awakeness can feel that for the first time, you can actually feel what's happening in your body.
Yeah.
And if you let that be just as it is, and you don't add any viewpoints to that emotion, all of a sudden all that energy that you'd been spending trying to get emotions to go away, or to hide them, or suppress them, or escape them, take drugs, it's all that energy gets freed. It's just like it's just free, and the story gets freed, and you're able just to rest here more and more. It becomes very natural.
And you have more energy too.
More energy.
Yeah.
Because the energy's not tied up into that anymore.
Because it's often tied up in the story, and then that gets tied up in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I teach emotional freedom technique, because I feel that whenever you're like I just recently did an episode on stress, and I pointed out, when you're in distress, you're sort of like this all the time. You're just hanging on. And when you do emotional freedom technique, I talk about this a lot. When you finish, a lot of times people go, thank God, because they don't realize that they've been under that stress or the anxiety or whatever it might be. Depression, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, takes a lot of energy. It's and so, like you say, once you've cleared that part of the body, then the mind is even freer, and vice versa. I think it works together. That's one of the reasons.
It is free, and you're able to use the mind totally. Actually, that's why I say it's not where you're killing the mind. Ultimately,
no,
the mind becomes this really perfect servant for your existence when it's no longer wrapped in those stories. I think that what you said was really nice and very important. That you said that we don't know actually the energy that we're putting into the storytelling, and that we don't really know it until it's often gone. That's why with this message, what I'm trying to do is break it down very simply. I know a lot of other people are too. You are too, it seems. Is that you just ask people simple questions like, are you feeling stressed a lot? It's a very simple question.
Sure.
And is the way that you're processing your life, is it really, really working? And where are you going? Have you ever asked yourself that? Just little simple questions like that makes people sort of look into their experience and see, actually I am stressed a lot. I feel like I'm having to control and do all these things, and actually it's not really working. And then I don't know where I'm going actually. I know I'm going somewhere. It's like the streets of New York City are like everybody's going somewhere, but nobody knows really where they're going. And if you stopped every one of them and you said, where are you going? A lot of them wouldn't be able to actually tell you, because they don't really know, actually. Because we're just programmed to go towards something. And the ones that can give you an answer will give you an answer. This is what I talk about in my addiction book. If you ask somebody, so what is it that you're seeking? It forces somebody to give an answer. You have to conceptualize it then. And that forces you to stop acting unconsciously and just seeking, and it forces you to say, this is what I'm seeking, and then you put it on the table there. So then, so people say, well, I'm seeking happiness, okay. What is that? This
So you
idea
just keep
that-
going further and further down, in other words, until you get to the bedrock. Is that what you're?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's an inquiry that I have in the book, and I say, so you're seeking happiness, okay? So you're putting happiness out into some future moment. You say there's some happiness down there. So if you acquired all of that happiness, if you had all of that right now, how would you experience that in your body and mind? And the first time people will say, well, you know, I'd be giddy and stuff. But if you go deeper, what they're telling you is that I wouldn't have to seek that anymore.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Sure.
And so, then I asked them, is the story that the happiness is in the future and you have to go find it, is that providing freedom from the seeking? Is it providing present peace, which is what you're looking for?
Yeah.
And they'll say, no. Actually, that's the problem. See? So if they actually see that in their own life, that the thing that they're looking for and the story that they don't have, it is the cause of their suffering and not the solution. Then the last question I asked them, are you willing to notice every time the thought arises that says, you have to go find this thing? If you're willing just to notice that thought and take a moment of rest into this present experience completely, just relax into it without emphasizing thoughts, and you find out, oh, wow, there's actually peace here. There's actually the end of seeking is already right here.
And it's always been here.
And it's always been here.
Yeah.
And so the very thing we're looking for is right here. And that's like the cosmic joke of it all.